Welcome to another episode of Six Figure Secrets for Fractional Experts. My name is Bradley Jacobs. I'm your host, the founder and CEO of Mylance. Today, I'm incredibly excited to be joined by Brian Bogert. Brian is a human behavior and performance coach, speaker, and business strategist. He disrupts the normative approach on how to create sustainable growth and lasting change personally and professionally. I know there's a lot more there. We'll have you dive into it, but welcome to the show, Brian.
I'm excited to be here, brother. Any chance I have to be able to pour some good into the world, I take it up, especially when it aligns with people like you. So
awesome. Well, excited to have you. How would you elaborate on that intro? Like, tell the audience who you are and what you do.
Well, I always start by saying I'm a husband and father first. And it's important to say that for me, because though I've said that for 20 years, my words, actions, and behaviors were not always congruent. They are now. But the truth of the matter is what I do is a byproduct of a whole lot of experiences that I've had. It's really now a manifestation of who I am. But the story that I'm most well known for that roots a lot of everything that we have, and I'll just hit the tops of the waves here, is that when I was 7 years old, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was completely torn from my body, was reattached, 24 surgeries, and a whole bunch of shit that I'm sure we can unpack in little moments that will be relevant. But at the end of the day, I used to believe this was my transformation story. And the truth of the matter is it was the story that just created a lot of trash from my past that I pushed through and pushed down for years that I didn't realize until 27, 30, 35, as it was starting to explode and get dumped into other areas of my life. At the end of the day, I had a lot of early success because I learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance because of all the things I was trying to prove. And I was really blessed by age 27. We had a $10 million business and growing, and I had everything I thought I ever wanted. And then it wasn't too long afterwards that I almost lost everyone and everything in my world as a result of me and completely unconscious behaviors that were a result of this trash. And so I've had lots of success. I've built businesses, exited businesses, and I've helped a lot of both enterprises and complete startups or solopreneurs learn to really step more authentically into who they are and their worth, their value, be able to garner it in the marketplace, message and communicate it. But at the end of the day, I like to believe that I'm helping heart-centered impact makers identify and remove the waste in their lives and businesses that they don't even know exists. So they can actually exist in the wealth side of life, the areas that create joy, freedom, and fulfillment that we all seek and desire, but might be fleeting in those moments when we're feeling completely isolated and alone in this journey. So what do I do? I've been described in many ways as breaking compartments. I don't fit in one silo, one singular type of description, but at the end of the day, I'm a force multiplier. And so whether we're scaling business, whether we're helping deepen relationships, whether we're getting back time through systems, intention, and awareness, whether we're ultimately helping people dial in their health, I don't view life in just singular buckets. And it's not like a work-life balance situation. It's about how do we do this with intention and with integration so that we can have all things that we desire and be able to live the lives that we're capable of living without all the unnecessary restraints.
So we're going to get into a lot of depth in what you shared. It's going to be an emotional conversation or talking about emotions. And there's certain people listening that I know do the work, right? And they've been in the coaching containers and the programs and therapy and things like that. And there's certain people that haven't and don't necessarily totally understand or maybe even agree with it or think it's legitimate. For both parties, I think we can make it tangible by saying, what are the behaviors that the waste is evidence of?
Meaning, what are the behaviors that would suggest that there's waste that exists for people?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say any level of protection, justification, need to defend. That's one of them. Shame is what I call the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. It shows up as about 50 other emotions, right? Scarcity, perfectionism, control, blame. All of these are emotions that then manifest things. Anger is a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion. Its sole purpose is to push everyone and everything away. So I'm giving external descriptions, but what can it look like? It can look like fragmented communication and lack of clarity in communicating a vision or something that needs to get done with a team. It could look like lack of boundaries or accountability that leads to complete emotional or financial extortion. It could be not knowing how to price and set your valued time and resources in a way that justifies what you're really worth because you're always feeling like selling is an inconvenience and a burden to other people. It can look like reactions in a moment with a spouse or with kids that have nothing to do with what's right in front of you, right? It could literally be a look your wife gives you at a moment, and it reminds you of how your mom looked at you when you loaded the dishwasher incorrectly when you were 8, right? And in my life, it showed up in some very specific ways, right? I said earlier, I learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance. But what does that also mean? I genuinely believed that my value was contingent upon whatever outcomes I created or whatever I did for somebody, independent of who I was, right? Which meant that it was always about what was next, always about that next target. It was a do hustle. And I was always trying to outrun and perform, but it also was a really painful journey getting there, right? I would have moments where I had just brought in a multi 6-figure account in my old business, and we'd have 15 buyers there because it's a multi-billion-dollar company. I've spent 18 to 24 months curating and deepening the relationships to even make that happen. And we go into the first meeting with our team to start transitioning from my sales development to actual procurement and delivery of services through our team. And one of them would lean over because I'd be talking and they'd say, "Shh, Brian, you can't talk so fast. You can't talk so loud." And even though everybody in that fucking room is there because of me, what do? I shrink down and I bite my tongue because, well, apparently I'm not good enough in this moment, even though the whole reason everyone's there is because of me, right? Because my whole life I was told I talk too fast. I talk too loud. By the way, you've probably noticed that when you've listened for 5 minutes so far, right? It also would show up in little moments like this where my wife would say something like, "Hey, honey, what should we do with the kids this weekend?" Or, "What do you want to do with the kids this weekend?" But my shame and my anger filter would cause me to hear it this way: "Hey, honey, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father here recently. So what are you going to do to make up for it this weekend?" Well, of course I'm fucking defending that shit. I'm a great husband and father. I've been saying that for 20 years, right? So what do? I feel all the wave of emotion in my chest expands. And then I rattle off the 10 things I've done in the last few days to show her I'm a good husband and father. And that wasn't even what she asked, right? It shows up in so many ways that people don't realize. It shows up in health and manifested health. I lived with daily physical pain for 31 years. I'm 2.5 years with zero physical pain, and it has nothing to do with anything I did physically, right? Like, this waste shows up in our time. It shows up in our relationships. It shows up in our health. It shows up in our finances. It shows up in scarcity that blocks us from things. Like, I could talk about this for days because anyone that dismisses this is probably somebody that learned very early on to protect themselves, to shut off emotion, to make it not real, because we were told to shut up, put a smile on, and perform in this life. We were told, especially as men in many cases, you don't cry, you can't do that, you can't feel these things. But here's the truth of the matter. The second you protect, the second you disconnect from emotion, human connection without emotion is not human connection. And I'll tell you in a second, and I'll give you a chance to, after I pause from this just download that I'm giving you. But like, there's this whole philosophy and framework that we teach that even shows that the second you protect yourself, you're guaranteed you're going to disconnect yourself from who you are and what you want, right? And so how does trash show up? It shows up in all the negative shit that people experience on a day-to-day basis in their lives that they wish they could escape, but they're too afraid to go inward to find the solution.
Wow. Kind of like speechless. So we just digest for a sec. So let's bring this to one example that we can maybe then take through. We'll see how long we take it.
Totally great.
The most tangible one, at least that stands out for me, is I feel the need to perform with my business where it feels like part of my identity. And it's something I've been working to unravel for years of like, the business is not me. I am not the business. The business could fail and I could still be an incredibly valuable, worthy human being. But that certainly resonates, of this desire to perform, to have a big, successful, growing business that adds tons of value, because then I will feel good about myself. Then I will be worthy, lovable, the whole thing, right? So and that's an example you mentioned. So let's take that one. And I would guess a lot of people in listening can resonate to some degree from the standpoint of, I have anxiety about my business. I worry it's not going to succeed. I have imposter thoughts about delivering for clients or even signing new clients. I have imposter thoughts about, as you brought up, the value in pricing, like charging enough, charging a lot. All of those, any one of those things, if they resonate, it's in part, right, because I feel the need to perform. Okay. So let's just say that that's true. What is the antidote for it? Like, what do? You said you haven't had the physical pain for 2 years, so you've made a lot of progress in this space. What do you do?
Can I give you just maybe a story or a couple of examples? Because it'll make it even tangible and real. I can answer the question just generically, but I can also just help you see some examples. We've got a client. It's a friend that I've worked with now for a number of years. She is a very gifted creator. And for over a decade, she's been building a rhythm in a very specific niche. Okay. And within this niche, she has deep relationships, has established great value. But for about a decade, she'd never made over 50 grand in a year. And in the midst of all of this, right, like she's got competitors that are charging 3, 4, 5, 10 times as much for projects that don't deliver half the results. She has amassed in that time across her own channels, multiple of her social channels, like real followers over in excess of 1 million on multiple platforms. And we're talking like real followers. Never has there been a paid follower, and her engagements through the freaking roof. She averages between 5 and 7 million views on her social channels weekly, and she gets about 300 to 400 DMs weekly. I'm trying to give some perspective to the volume that she's created. And in this niche, because of the relationships, she's facilitated multiple 6, 7, and 8-figure contracts between suppliers, vendors, developers, and folks that fit within the mix. She's never benefited from any of it. In one of our very first calls, we were able to tie her deepest shame, her deepest need to perform, and her deepest draw as it related to her lack of self-worth to a moment when she was 12, when her creativity, her creative lens was criticized, shut down, and blocked. She never realized that her deepest trauma was directly connected to her creative profession. So her entire life, she's been living this way. Why do I tell you this? Because there wasn't just a singular moment where we shine the light on it and that's the answer. But the first piece is you have to acknowledge that you are operating in a place that's below capacity at a frequency and energy that you don't want to live in, and be willing to look at and stand in and find your truth. Now, what does that mean? For her, this was a quick way that we were able to compress time through an exercise I did with her to be able to allow her to feel and associate all of what was showing up in her business. And then it became a systematic process of going through, raising her level of awareness, recognizing the patterns that took place. We have a 5 pillars that we teach that ground all of these concepts, but it's starting to actually pay attention to pattern recognition. All the times that she was shutting off emotion or getting overwhelmed and reacting, all the moments that she's starting to protect, right? To start to unwind. Why do I tell you all this? Within 9 months, after 10 years of doing the same thing, she already was making 250 grand in a run rate at that moment. And within the following year, she was already on track to do 7 figures, $1 million for her first time. She increased her rates. She started protecting her time. She started supporting and creating boundaries. She built systems and started delegating things that she for years believed she needed to. She restructured offers that she felt like she was needing to deliver all these things, when in reality, what was actually being valued was something completely different and was wasting a bunch of her time. Right. But again, it was like, well, if I give everybody all these assets, then this makes me fit inside the box, but she doesn't fit inside the box. Right. This is just one example. There's another with a guy that his business, he had 17 months of liquidity left. It took him 7 years to get to $2 million. And then all of a sudden, he didn't see a runway forward. Within 3 months, we'd unpacked that his deepest trauma was connected to the relationship with his brother and his father. And every male that had any resemblance in his life that indicated a relationship like those two would trigger him into this defensive state that he didn't even realize he was doing, which blocked him from investors, which blocked him from partnerships, which blocked him from delegating. He lived in this control state. Their house was too small. They'd outgrown it. His wife wanted to make all these changes. So we started to do the inner work. We started, again, doing a lot of this pattern work, helping him understand how this was showing up with his communication with his operations team, with his admin, with how he was doing these things. Literally within 12 months, they doubled the size of the business and they gave raises. They fixed all of the problems. His health had started to shift around. And it's not like this magic pill. But at the end of the day, we can compress a ton of time in these areas. And I've got hundreds of these stories because of all the people I've worked with. And often it's people who would identify with not having had trauma in their life, with having been raised in a good household with loving, supportive parents. But there's nuances to where and how these things show up that embed deeply in our belief systems, right? And when I say we have cellular memory, We truly do. That's why our bodies feel something. That's why when my wife would say something, why? It's because of all the times in my life that people didn't believe that I was run over by a truck and my arm was torn off when I told them. My own truth that I'd be living and delivering in, I was challenged on for years. People would be like, no, that's too audacious of a story. They'd literally pause and look to my parents for validation. But the reason I'm telling you all this is I just gave you two stories of two individuals that were lean teams, small companies, or solopreneurs, and felt all the same things that we described and you had talked about in the beginning. The reality of it is everything they needed was right in front of them. They were blocking it from themselves, and they didn't even know they were doing it, which is 99% of the time what happens when businesses fail and leaders can't step into that role. It's always an internal issue. It's rarely an external one.
In a way, I can hear the two sides of like, one, it rests on my shoulders, which feels maybe scary or whatever. But the other side is I am fully in ownership of my business succeeding. And I'd frankly much rather rely on me, than anybody else or anything outside of me. Like I have the power to make it succeed or fail, but I have the power to make it succeed. So like, lucky me, right? I get to rely on myself and know I have the tools within.
Agree. You know, it's like the idea of like this, every time everything goes wrong in our lives, and how often do people say, gosh, when am I going to stop getting tested? Right? When is the universe going to stop testing me? When's God going to stop testing me? When's, right? But like, that's even the nuance of the flip there is it's like, what if you're not being tested? What if you're being protected and promoted and you just don't know how yet? Right? Like it's so much about how we decide to process things. You know, there's this famous quote. It's like, there's the stories there's the things that happen to us and the stories that we tell ourselves about it. There is no right or wrong. There is no good or bad. There is no black or white. Right. And that's also why so much of the freedom that I'm talking about comes to the place of learning how to be so present in your life. Because truly, if you're living in the past, you're living in trash. If you're living in fear of the future, you're living in trash. If you're living in this moment, you're free of all of it. But you also have to do the work to free yourself from it, which means you have to find the source or sources of these emotions, right? The patterns and beliefs that were created as a result of them. You've got to be really honest with yourself and the relationships that matter most in your life when you start doing some of this work, because it's change, it's disruption. But what's on the other side of it is truly exponential freedom. And it's not like you just wake up one day and have it figured out, because there is no final destination. It's just constant evolution of self. But the difference I tell people is, look, when I was 27, 28, 29, 30, I was spending months and years of my life in this low frequency energy and emotion. I was miserable all the time. It was yucky. It was gross. I didn't know it. And from the outside, everything looked good. But as I've started doing this work, right, those years became months. Then months and years became weeks and months. Then weeks and months became days and weeks. Then that became hours and days. Now, most of the time, do I still get triggered in a moment? Do I still get overwhelmed? Do I still sometimes feel isolated and lonely in my business? I did this morning. I felt overwhelmed, but yet I didn't let it ruin my whole day. It's not going to impact my whole week. It was minutes and moments spent in this reality of the fact that, I'm still human, which means I'm still going to feel, right? And I'm still going to process these things. And I will never fully escape the trash from my past. But I can shift my mindset. And this is something I want all of you to hear. The trash from your past is not your fault. It just becomes your responsibility once you become aware of it or you start burying others in yours. But they've even done studies that have shown that it's generationally inherited. Trauma passes through the DNA. And my wife and I, we've traced our stuff back 3 generations to see where the patterns developed and the behaviors and how those manifested into our own realities. But that's also what's empowered us to be able to not only save our marriage, reverse that trend, but also our kids don't even remember having an angry father. And we've already broken some of those generational patterns.
When we talk about businesses of one, right? Our audience are fractional executives, independent consultants. They are doing it all. Talk about the challenges they face. They're, the biggest challenges that you see, and maybe the top 1 or 2 or 3 things that they can really be doing to set their business up for. And I really want to focus on long-term sustainable success, right? I want this to work for years.
The biggest piece that many solopreneurs, fractional consultants, those that work for themselves, the teams of one, as you just said, what they often fail to realize is that they are the product. And often the biggest failure point for most people in that role is the inability to sell themselves. And so a lot of this does root back to self-worth, but it also roots back to understanding language and clarity and messaging and conviction and energetic connection to the things that they care about and the reasons they got into that business in the first place. But I would tell you that, like, point blank, one of the biggest and most consistent problems in any business, but I would say in particular for the businesses of one, is revenue generation. If you don't have any money coming in, you can't build a business, and it cannot be sustainable, and you can't invest in the systems or the teams or the technology so that it's sustainable truly, right? And so what happens for most of these people? They believe that they are escaping the 9 to 5, the corporate world, to have the freedom, but all they've really done is they've given themselves a job and they've defined their own value based on an hourly rate that they're exchanging, right? And so they haven't actually looked at this around, how do I utilize these skill sets to maximize my return and actually align it with the life that I want, with the time, the people, the freedom. I would say that though is the probably singular biggest thing, okay? The second piece is there's often a confusion with many of these folks as to the activities that actually move the needle the most, as well as the ones that really even matter. And so a really tangible tactical piece, because that first one I didn't give a solution for, because it connects to some of the worth and there's more just than a simple way to get clarity on it, okay? But if there's revenue generation as your issue, again, look inward and don't just go find some sales training to figure out better tactics and strategies. Like, figure out what it is about yourself that's blocking you from going and doing that successfully. On the second piece, though, before you do anything in your business, and before you do everything in your business, whether you're in a position to outsource or not, I want you to always ask yourself 3 questions. The first question is this something that only I can do? Meaning, in your unique area of brilliance, the things that you can't teach, train, hand off, systematize, you have to be involved or it won't get done. Now, one of the big issues in this is that most solopreneurs convince themselves that that bucket is way bigger than it really is. Usually that's 10% or less of the activities in the business. Okay. The second question then becomes, is this something that someone else could do or would do better? Because whether it's a VA, whether it's AI and a piece of technology that you build, whether it's a one other person so that now you're a team of 2, understand though as well, like, what are the essential activities that need to get accomplished, but maybe don't fit within your realm of genius, or maybe even the reason you started this business in the first place. Because guess what? There's a lot of that in a business that when you start one, you don't always think about.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot that has to be done to keep a business moving and in line. The last question though is, if I'm really being honest with myself, is this even something that needs to be done? There are oftentimes I see people making work for themselves and using it as pressure and like, I've got to work, I have to do this. But if they're really honest with themselves, like, they're spending a significant portion of time that really doesn't actually matter. And I mean that a little bit in a flippant way, but there's some truth to it, because there's a lot of activities get done in business that don't really move the needle for growth, for deeper impact with clients, for freedom of time. Like, and it's because we've just always done it that way, not because it actually serves a purpose. And so those are typically the top 2 areas that I see, is both in the inability to create growth and revenue, and then on the second side in prioritization around time, as well as what that can turn into as it relates to inability to delegate, or poor communication, or having to have control over everything, or placing more value on yourself in an area that really doesn't matter. Those more often than anything are the top 2. And there's a few others that kind of follow it, but obviously those 2 cover a lot of the challenges that I'm sure many of the people listening to this are experiencing.
The activities that just don't need to get done, those are the easiest to cut if they genuinely do not need to get done. What do you see are often common activities, especially in the smaller businesses of 1, 2, 3, that they are doing, spending time and energy on, that can literally just, you don't need to delegate, you can literally just get rid of?
Well, one that I would say might not seem as obvious out the gate, but there are a lot of people that will spend a ton of time doing research on prospects, developing a new product, developing a new idea or strategy, constantly retooling something, but they never launch it.
Mm.
Right? Like they're constantly redeveloping their systems, their structures, but it's like, it's not generating revenue and it's not deepening impact to clients, but you're convincing yourself it's important.
Mm.
Now, there is some of it that really is, but very often I find people burying themselves in busy work versus the things that really move the needle. Right. And so there's not a really clear and defined path. There are situations where people will not understand the importance of their email, right? Or where they're spending their time. Email's a big time suck, right? Social media can be a big time suck because they think, oh, well, I've got to post, I have to be consistent. But they haven't thought through how to actually batch or create a system so that they can do more volume with less effort, right? Well, every time an email comes in, it's a distraction. They don't set up boundaries within their system. And so it's like, well, I got to respond to my clients, or I need to get back to my client within 5 minutes. And it's like, do you? Right? Like I have set up boundaries and expectations with my time, my attention, and my response rate even. My clients don't expect an immediate response from me. They expect a response typically within 24 to 36 hours, and that's 5 days a week because I tell people I don't check messages on the weekends. Why? Because my priority aligns with my family. Now, if there's an emergency, do people know how to get a hold of me? Yes, right? But at the same time, like I don't jump because a client message comes in. But how often does a business owner, they're in the middle of a task, they're getting ready to build something, or they're preparing for a meeting, and an email comes in from a client and it derails the next 2 hours of their life. And it's like, right? Like, does that even need to be done? And again, sometimes it's done at all. Sometimes it's done right now. And so those are some of the like little things. Email, getting caught in unnecessary scrolling online, or doing, oh, I'm doing research on all my clients, and really you're just scrolling the web and like finding these things. But if you don't find a way to take your ideas or your research or your building and take action to make it live, then that's unnecessary activity.
My favorite one for me was making business models. I would make these beautiful, complex business models projecting out growth and churn and run rate and how much cash I needed and everything. And then I would never go look at it. It was like, never.
Right. But that's a great example. Like, right. Even the researching for clients or building a product, it's the same type of thing. It's like people in their minds put a lot of value sometimes on things that really don't move the needle for your business.
Yeah.
And so that's often what I'm trying to help people sort through as well. Because there's just noise that we create for ourselves in unnecessary things that don't deliver. Now, I'm a big believer that you have to have structured time in working on your business as well as working in your business. And so I'm not opposed to doing strategic planning, building new products, having a business plan. But it's what do you do with it from there? Because if it's just clarity and calibration in the beginning, well, then maybe that still serves a purpose. But if it doesn't even guide your activities from the point that you create it, then why are you doing it in the first place, right? Like that was a great example. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I noticed I was actually recreating them. Like I would make one, not use it, and then I would make another one and another one. And I would do it because I was good at it. And it made me feel good, confident that the business
made you feel like you were accomplishing something.
Yeah.
And I got another business plan done.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, is this helping me get clients or retain clients?
Yeah.
That's pretty much like my lens. If it's not doing one of those two things, I shouldn't be doing it.
Uh-huh.
So I stopped. I was like, I don't make business models anymore. I just don't do it. Right. I refuse to let myself do it. So one of the things that I do, and I'm curious your take, is to make sure I'm doing needle moving activities every single day. The night before, actually it starts the week before, and I make like the top 5 things, top priorities for the week when I'm clear, when I'm, in my higher mind. And then every night before I say, what am I start my day with? I'm going to start my day with these either 2 or 3 needle moving activities, and nothing else gets done, email, Slack, LinkedIn, anything, until these needle moving activities happen. Yep. That's been my strategy for myself. I'm curious what you've seen.
I think it's a really solid strategy. It's consistent with the strategy that I teach.
Okay.
And that I apply myself. Now, I would tell you that I am less structured in it now than I was at one point when I was creating the discipline, meaning I don't have to sit down every single day and write that list for myself in the way that I once did. However, every day is dictated by the same thing. I know every day at the end of the day what the priorities, the top 2 or 3 priorities are for the next day. And I visit those highest priority. I call them, I used to call it a fire list. because it's like, what are the things that I need to pay attention to first before anything else? And at the same time, there are days that I will only do that. Meaning there are some times that whole piece might take the first half of my day. It might take a whole day. It might take an hour. But if I got the most important things done for that day, there's always shit to do on the list for my business. But the question becomes, are any of these things going to be real needle movers for my time and attention today? Am I being honest with myself about where my priorities are? Do I need to go spend some time and go ride bikes with my kids tonight? Right? Like the point is like, if you can knock those things off out of the gate, and I believe that for personal practices too, right? I call those linchpins for me in my personal. It's like, what do I need to do in the morning, in my quiet time, in my breath work, in my movement, in my stretching, in whatever I need to do for me? If those things don't happen, everything else falls apart. It's the same thing in the business. What are the 1, 2, or 3 activities? And sometimes they're the same activities every day for certain people in certain businesses. Other times they're rotating. But yes, I love that discipline. And truly, I've not only used it, but I teach that same concept, because if you're aware and you're intentional, you're going to be directionally accurate more than you won't be.
Yeah. Love it. So the things that have helped me the most in taking things off my plate, because I loved how you talked about there are just certain things that need to get done that are not in your zone of genius that you just shouldn't be doing. Right. And so the 2 things that come to mind are AI or automations, like just bucket AI and automations in one. And then the other is a VA or an assistant or a chief of staff or just someone else that could just get shit done for you. I'm curious how you think about specifically the AI and automations piece. I actually recorded a whole podcast on VAs, so we'll leave that for now. But the AI piece, which I know you have a bunch of experience in, how do you see? I know it's such a fast moving space right now. It's absolutely incredible. But from a practical, tangible, applicable way, how do you see AI help take all of a bunch of shit off your plate that you don't need to be doing, but the business does need to get done?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have some real-time case studies within my own business and even in clients that we're working on as we speak. I want to start with saying one quick thing, though. I was adamantly against AI for probably the first 2 years that it was out. And the reasons why are still true. But I have found a niche in a way of not only focusing on it for myself, but teaching and using it or helping others with it that is different. My biggest thing was the dilution to humanity and the dilution to authenticity and voice and messaging, because so many people are not aware and intentional in what they feed it, how they direct it, the guidelines that they set with it, and they use it to tap into aggregate information to make themselves sound smarter versus being able to like actually capture who they really are and what they're really doing. And so there's a lot of like dilution in the marketplace right now because there's a lot of people starting to blend into that middle who are losing the clarity of their own unique value and voice because they're now leveraging it too much. I am also not a believer in using AI simply for speed and automation. I have a belief, though, that it can be a very effective tool to compress a shitload of time to help make things tangible in ways that we as humans may not otherwise make them tangible, to create consistencies where we as humans fail in consistency, and to do so in a way that has an insert human here for any human interaction as a result of the AI. Meaning, we have and are now using and have built pretty very robust systems in our own business that are heavily leveraging deep workflow builds with AI supplementation. And you're right, automations and AI, we're putting them in the same bucket, but they're not the same, but they can make each other more powerful, right? And so it's important that people understand that. Great example. In fact, we now have productized this. We're launching it as we speak in beta mode. 9 months ago, I wanted to create a solution for my mastermind to deepen the impact for the people in the room and to create more exposure for what we're doing within the room. Okay, because there's a ton of marketing and sales and leadership and AI development and product building and offer structures that we do that nobody really knows we do. And that's okay, right? But educational marketing makes it accessible. So I built a tool because I had a team that was spending 3 hours a day or 3 hours a week on a couple of specific tasks that were takeaways from those calls. So I started to then play with AI and test it, taking just a 1 hour transcript. And I started to develop this theory that was a repeatable process that could be activated just from a 1 hour transcript. What it's developed into now, and I can show you, share you, we can even give you the link to it because we're launching it as we speak, but it's, you upload a transcript, And from a 1-hour transcript, I've built a really robust voice message methodology that is able to extract voice message and tone, speaking cadence, vocabulary, very accurate representation of the key speaker that's identified within it, within just a 1-hour transcript, to about 90 to 95% proficiency. And from that, and a 20-second upload from a form, 7 minutes later, you get 7 assets. Pre-written in your voice, all set to go. You get a very robust meeting summary that gives all the actionable takeaways, all of the emotional takeaways, all the breakthroughs, all written in my authentic voice. I get a timestamp summary that gives it almost like a podcast style so that my team can navigate those videos to recap what happens. Because why? I talk fast, and when I give them coaching and feedback, they want to go slow it down and re-listen to it, right? Now they can actionably do that faster. And a recap email that reminds them all where to find all these assets within our system. Then we have a PR ready, almost like a Forbes style written article that can be put out as a blog or automatically put onto any of the PR articles and platforms, already pre-scrubbed for all AI indicative writing patterns, maximized for SEO and AEO, and scrubbed from all AI metadata so that it doesn't get throttled back in your search engines, right? Then it gets rewritten into a LinkedIn structure, again in your voice, for a LinkedIn article and writes the LinkedIn post. And then there's a promotional email for whatever it was. This applies for masterminds, podcasts, etc. But why? Because I didn't want to repeat having to rebuild this. And even though I had a custom GPT to do it, even inside that custom GPT, my team would take 45 minutes to 90 minutes to get all these assets produced. So what did we do? We built a whole workflow using AI systems and bots, and literally 1 transcript upload, 7 minutes later, 7 assets are done. We've already got 7 other assets produced. I've got one for my podcast, and it tags into the intake form. So when someone schedules on my show, I've got a process where I want my show notes on my calendar. We've got a folder that we create for our production team. We start doing all these things. Created a workflow that plugs into that. It automatically creates all the folders. It pulls all the information I need from the intake form. It automatically puts it into Google Docs. It attaches it to the calendar. It does all these pieces. I've got a Zoom process link because all of my Zoom sessions, whether it's with clients, my other things, all get recorded. For 3 years, I've stored all of them in my drive. We had a VA doing this. I built a whole robust process that stores and renames, and with a subfolder and custom subfolder and logic pathing for how these files get stored. Every Zoom session automatically puts in my drive, and I get an email at the end with links to the folders where they are. I have all the assets, and it triggers downstream AI bots that are doing summaries, email drafts, all these different pieces. These are ways that I used to use a full-time assistant that I now can program to even have more scale, more reach, but I get my time back. So that my value, which yes, I can build these tools and I do, and it's a whole different concept, but my value is in the work I do with people. And so what do I want to do? I want to free up as much of my time because I hate doing those repeat tasks. And who likes doing them, whether they're a VA or not, right? And so I had a VA doing a bunch of these things. We still have VAs supporting some of our teams, but we have production teams, we have other teams. But I'm right now on a path to show as a case study, I'm about halfway there, that by the end of July, I'm going to have 90% of the non-human essential tasks, meaning they're not interacting, they're not communicating. It's purely transactional actions like file moving and naming and all this noise. 90% of them in my business is going to be all automated with AI and workflows by the end of July. Does it take time to build it? Yes. Do you have to be clear in what you want to build and what it needs to do and how it needs to function? Yes. But no matter whether you're leading a team, hiring a VA, or using these workflows, it's going to require the level of awareness and intention and communication required to be able to build and get back that time. But I'm a believer now that almost anything is possible. And we've built a lot of these tools and custom systems for clients as well. Because why? If you can live in that 10 to 15% of your area of genius and you can do amazing things. I have a client who launches a solo business as a 30-year HR person. And within her first year, she's already doing a $500,000 run rate. And she's built systems and tools. She's working 20 hours a week at a $500,000 run rate in less than a year after leaving corporate. Like, it's possible. You just have to believe it, and you have to put in the work to get there within yourself and within your business.
Especially for businesses of one, right? You don't have the time, you don't have the resources to just hire people to do stuff. I mean, building these automations, I'm curious. So I've used both Zapier and N8N. I'm curious if you're using both those.
I use both.
Yeah.
Yep, I use both. N8N is the one that I'm using for the very like robust long form ones.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of capabilities. It's an amazing backend, and whether you know code, don't know code, or anywhere in between, there's options that work. But I mean, to the point of what I even just told you, though, like I'm gonna see if I can show you this because you'll if it'll work, you'll get what I'm saying. Let's see. I think it's right here. Like this is my Zoom workflow in N8N. What I'm trying to give some complexity though to is like it's not just like a 3 or 4 node workflow.
Right. Right.
Right? So sometimes if you're really clear on what you want to accomplish, it's just a matter of iteration and steps until you build this. And yet all of those little minute micro steps were things that people were doing before.
Yeah.
That they did not need to be doing because their time and attention wasn't adding value to it other than it needed to be done.
I love this stuff so much. And it's incredible when you build something that just works and it just takes stuff off your plate. I mean, the simplest one I have that I love so much is when I have a Zoom call, I have the Fathom transcript be sent automatically to Claude, which drafts a follow-up email in my inbox. Right. So it just takes the two, it adds a subject line, right? And it summarizes what we talked about and takeaways and things like that. And I always go in and finalize it, right? I never just send it purely AI.
That's how I am, by the way. I don't ever have emails go out on my behalf. They show up as a draft in my inbox for me to review. But what does that save me time on? I don't have to type that. I don't have to recall. I can look at it. I can go from memory. I can look at my notes, and it's time compression, right? Like you just gave a perfect example of a very simple system that delivers value and moves the needle in your business. Because whether you're meeting with a client, whether you're meeting with a prospective client, whether you're meeting with a business partner, whether you're meeting with your team, that same process is meaningful.
Yeah. No, I was dreading drafting these follow-up emails every single time. And I was like, there has to be a better solution. And it was so simple. It took me 10
In 20 years as an entrepreneur, I've never done follow-up or given any follow-up documents, follow-up emails, follow-up summaries of anything I've done. And we're talking like crazy coaching work, I've never, ever in 20 years done it until the last year. But what has it done? It's a lot because I'm dyslexic. I don't like to type, right? I'm great with my words when I speak them. I'm great in structuring thought. I'm intentional. I'm strategic, but I was never going to do that. I'll do 1-day intensives with people. People pay me 15 grand to come in for a 1-day coaching session for clarity and observation, all these things. I would give them nothing on the backside of it. Now I record it with my Plot AI recorder. I put speaker labels on it, and I've built a custom GPT and tool that automatically grabs the transcript and produces about an 8 to 10 page summary that I review before I give it back to them. But what is it? It's all the critical moments, and they get to see the value that was there and remember it and revisit it because memory is fleeting, and it'll be quick and easy a year later to be like, oh yeah, that was a good fun day, but not really remember how life-changing it was.
Right.
Now I can make it tangible for people, right?
Yeah, it's huge. We get to wrap up, but I'm curious if you were to leave the audience with one piece of advice, one anecdote, one thing that they can leave with, what would you say?
I'm going to set this up a little bit just because I think it's important. We've been talking about AI. And if we think about what AI does for us, AI helps us tap into aggregate information. It helps us connect the dots faster. It helps us see patterns faster. It helps us communicate faster. It helps us do research and understand things better. It helps us be more clear in who we are in so many ways. It can truly compress time and help leverage all variety. And the list goes on. And so I do genuinely believe that AI is probably the greatest area of opportunity and investment for any human, any business, any solopreneur, any person. I'm not talking about artificial intelligence, though. I'm talking about the OG AI, awareness and intentionality. If you put and double down your energy and your efforts to raise your level of awareness in everything you do, to raise your level of intentionality in everything you do, right? The words that you speak, the actions that you take, the behaviors that you have, the strategies that you implement in your business, the systems that you build, the way that you delegate and offload, the way you sell yourself. If you put awareness and intentionality into anything, especially artificial intelligence, you will find the leverage and scale that can exist there. The issue is most people don't ask enough questions to create enough options and opportunities to be able to have choices to make the changes they want and desire in their lives. And so I believe the greatest investment any of us can make is in AI, awareness and intentionality, right? But here's the other side to this. I do believe that we can all choose the change we want, or we can choose to change when we don't want change. Just like you were talking about the shift of perspective that, oh, I get the chance to build all this. I get the chance to own all of it and have all the freedom. You're right. But I'd also say that means that you are the one responsible for choosing the changes you want. So you don't have to react to and choose to change when you don't want change. I want to be in the driver's seat every day. And that's always what I'm trying to do, because that's where real freedom comes from, is from the inside. And how do you allow that to express externally? So double down on AI. I'm just talking about the OG kind.
Love it. So I see you have your website there, so we'll add it in the show links as well. Any other place that the audience can find you?
Yeah, if you're social media, I'm at Bogert Brian on any and all channels, including YouTube. So we put a ton of content out there. We create a lot of free value for the whole purpose of, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as we can by reducing the level of suffering that exists on this planet, largely, which I believe exists internal. So I would just say, regardless of anything, if you felt moved by anything from today's call, I believe that moved people move people. My only ask for you is that you move it through your world, right? Share it with somebody, implement it in your life, take action on something that matters. If you want to research and go watch my stuff and you want to stay silent there for 10 years, do it. I don't care. Because if you're moving the energy, it's still got the compound effect of the impact that we desire. But it all comes down to your choice, your change, and every action that you take in every moment.
Yeah, that ripple effect. That's everything. Brian, thank you so much. I could talk to you forever, but incredible conversation. Appreciate you sharing your insights with us today.
Appreciate you, Bradley.